All right, let's just jump right in. We're all hearing about AI nonstop, but what if the entire project, the whole shebang, isn't actually what we think it is? Today we're digging into a really provocative analysis that claims these systems we're building, well, they aren't being designed for intelligence, they're being designed for something else entirely.
This right here, this is the core idea of the source material. It's a complete flip of everything we're being promised. The argument is that for every positive goal of AI, there's been a structural swap for a function of control. So instead of boosting our intelligence, the system needs surveillance. Instead of true understanding, it just gives us prediction. And instead of giving us more freedom, more agency, its real goal is to make sure we comply. This really sets the stage for a totally different way of looking at AI.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the promise of AI. Before we get into the heavy stuff, we have to understand the story we're all being told. You know, that super optimistic vision of empowerment and convenience that the industry is selling us.
And you've got to admit, these ideas sound pretty great, don't they? We're promised these amazing personal assistants, digital twins that'll make our lives perfect. We're told that the insane energy costs are just a little bump in the road on our way to AGI. And this is a big one, that the tech itself is neutral. But according to this analysis, that's the myth we really need to look past.
So if that's the promise, what's the architectural reality? This is where things take a turn. The argument here is that underneath that friendly, helpful user interface, a completely different kind of machine is being put together.
At the heart of this whole thing is a concept called the behavioral avatar. Now, this isn't a tiny version of you living inside the computer. The source is super clear about this. It's a statistical model, kind of like a symbolic puppet that just finds patterns in what you've done before to guess what you'll do next. It doesn't understand why you do things, it only calculates what you're probably going to do.
And this is how that avatar gets used, in this constant feedback loop. The system watches you, it predicts your next move, and then, and this is the absolute key, it intervenes. It nudges you by changing your search results, suggesting a video, timing a notification, just to steer you a little. Then you act, it observes you again, and the model gets a little bit smarter. The point is, over time, that prediction starts to become a prescription.
This brings us to a really fundamental difference the source is pointing out. It argues that what we're calling AI is really just pattern matching on a mind-boggling scale. Real intelligence understands meaning, it comes up with new ideas, and it's efficient. These systems, though, they just connect the dots between data points and find a match with something that's happened before. They don't reason, they just repeat.
So why build these gigantic, wildly inefficient prediction machines instead of going after true intelligence? Well, this analysis says we need to follow the money, look at the incentives, and maybe that inefficiency isn't a flaw. Maybe it's telling us something really important.
Let's just get a baseline here. The human brain, the only proven example of general intelligence in the universe, runs on about 20 watts of power. That's like a dim light bulb. It's an absolutely incredible piece of engineering.
Now, compare that to today's AI. We are talking about data centers burning through gigawatts of power. That's as much as entire countries. This isn't a small difference. We're talking about a gap that is almost too big to comprehend. So is this just a temporary problem, or is it a clue to what the system is really for?
The argument here is that this isn't a bug on the way to something better, it's a feature. It's proof that the architecture is designed for something completely different than intelligence. I mean, if your goal was intelligence, you'd expect things to get more efficient, right? The fact that they're getting exponentially more power-hungry suggests the real goal is population-scale behavior modeling, which, yeah, it actually does need this much energy.
And who benefits from a goal like that? Well, it's not some grand conspiracy, it's just a convergence of incentives. Tech companies need to predict your behavior to keep you scrolling. Governments want to predict it to keep things stable. Finance, insurance, healthcare, you name it. They all, independently, have a need for a system that can model and predict what humans are going to do. Everybody's goals just happen to point toward building the exact same machine.
Okay, so how do you roll out this kind of infrastructure without people freaking out? The source lays out what it calls a boiling the frog trajectory, a gradual, four-phase deployment that makes every single step feel reasonable and totally acceptable on its own.
So it unfolds in these 4 phases. We're in phase 1 right now. The tools are really useful, and we choose to adopt them. Pretty soon, we hit phase 2, where these tools basically become required for work and just having a social life. The really big shift happens in phase 3.
That's where the system's predictions about you start to be seen as more reliable than your own choices. And that leads to the final stage, phase 4, where anytime you stray from your predicted path, it gets flagged as an error, a bug in you, not in the system. And this is the end game of that feedback loop we talked about. The system predicts what you'll like, it only shows you those things, you pick one of them, and your choice just confirms the prediction. After a while, the model isn't just predicting reality anymore, it's creating it. Your own preferences are being shaped inside a little box that the algorithm built for you. So, seeing this whole trajectory laid out, the source argues that it gives us a choice. The very first step is to call the system what it actually is, and then to realize that other paths are, at least for now, still on the table.
This is a key part of the analysis, just reframing the marketing terms we hear every single day. So, artificial intelligence? Let's call it behavioral prediction infrastructure. Personalization? That's actually comprehensive surveillance. And all those helpful recommendations? That's a form of social engineering. This isn't just messing with words, it's about trying to describe the function, not the brand name.
But this isn't just about tearing things down. The analysis also gives us a sketch of what an alternative could look like. Imagine an AI that runs completely on your device, that never sends your data anywhere. An AI that reasons from general principles instead of needing to build a massive behavioral profile on you. It would be efficient, it would be private, and it couldn't be used for control.
And that, of course, leads to the million-dollar question. If a genuinely empowering, privacy-first kind of AI is possible to build, why is all the money, all the talent pouring into the surveillance model?
The answer this analysis gives is blunt. A sovereign AI, one that's truly yours, breaks the business models of data collection and advertising. It gets rid of the need for massive data centers. And most importantly, it removes the very mechanism of behavioral prediction and control that convergence of interests we saw earlier absolutely demands. It's an economic and a political threat to the whole paradigm.
So, after laying this entire argument out, we're kind of left at a crossroads. The final point isn't about whether every single detail of this analysis is perfectly 100% correct.
And that's the thought we're left with. The source is urging us not to get bogged down in debating every little detail. The really important question, the one we have to ask ourselves, is what if the fundamental premise is true? What if we really are building a global control system and just calling it AI? What would that mean for us? And what should we do about it while we still can?